On to come was because we know that there's a lot of exciting things happening on Ride On these days, and there's a lot of exciting things happening in Tacoma Park. One of the things is a rethinking of different routes through the city and around the city, with the hospital closing and moving, as well as with the Purple Line coming in. There's a lot of rethinking and relooking at the different Ride On routes. In addition, I know members of the public have sent us a number of questions over the years, and this is our opportunity to ask them directly of Ride On, and hopefully have some good discussion tonight. So the way we usually structure these conversations is we're going to have just a 5-10 minute presentation, get an update on what's going on with Ride On, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you. Well, this is fun for me because I really love to talk about Ride On. So anyway, my name is Dan Hibbert. I'm the Division Chief for the Department of Transportation Division of Transit Services. And I'm here to represent to you one of the nation's top 50 transit organizations. We have over 375 buses in service 7 days a week. We actually are vehicle miles traveled probably 30th in the nation. So we get good effective use out of our buses. I've got a great team of over 650 bus operators and a staff of over 800 running this service. And we have a lot of cool stuff, and I do mean cool stuff, that's happening within transit for me, which I've been in my whole life in transit, and this is one opportunity to see really innovative things happening within Montgomery County. Last June, we started our first micro-transit program. It's called the Flex. It's a pilot program we started with 2 zones, one in Rockville, one in Glenmont-Wheaton, to test out the process. And really, it's a kind of a cool idea, similar to Uber and Lyft. You have an application on your phone. We have smaller buses that are fully lift equipped, that are driven by one of our trained Ride-On bus operators, and we work within a small zone. And we've seen ridership grow every single month in that program. We hope to get the service out in many communities because it allows us to get a smaller bus into the neighborhoods where we normally couldn't get a larger size bus. And we're really excited about the concept. We think it's going to be a growing concept. We're actually looking at considering it for our Flash or BRT program that's starting in the next couple of months, which is kind of cool too, and I'll get to that next. The other things that I want to first of all thank Tacoma Park especially, because starting in May of this year, 4 brand new fully electric buses will be running here on the Route 25. Through the support of Tacoma Park, we were able to get a federal grant to get those brand new buses here. The buses are made by a company called Proterra, which is growing like gangbusters across the country. They make a really cool bus, and you'll see it shortly. It looks like a regular Ride-On bus, but you won't hear it as much because it's all electric. But it's a great bus, and we're excited to get it going. We look to get another 10 more electric buses next year as we keep applying for federal grants. To say that I have a strong county executive and a county council supporting transit is an underestimation of where they're at. They really like transit, which is exciting for me because I think transit can provide a real good opportunity for our residents to be part of our community. One of the questions I got was about other programs. Well, to the credit of the county council, we now have Kids Ride Free. We're one of the few large organizations across the country where the kids up to the age of 18 can ride free anytime I have a bus in service. And my goodness, they took advantage of it. I love it because it gets new customers on board and they're realizing how great of an opportunity it is to get around, no cost to them. So we have programs like that for seniors. We have Seniors Ride Free weekdays. We also have it on weekends. I think it's Saturdays that we have it on weekdays, and weekdays is 9 to 3 roughly. So there's an opportunity there, and then there's discounted fares for seniors in the other hours. What else is going on? Okay, US 29 will have a brand new rapid transit bus system operating from the northern part of the county in Briggs Chaney all the way down to the Silver Spring Transit Center. We got brand new buses for this service. The first time I get to run 62-foot articulated buses. They're the kind with the fold in the middle. Well, we don't like them fold, like keep them straight. But we'll be starting that service sometime in June of this year. We're building the stations right now, and these stations will be state-of-the-art. In fact, these buses won't have fare boxes inside. You'll pay for your fare outside and just come on board. It's kind of cool. We're also, the bike racks are inside. So we've done a lot of innovative things to make transit a much more interesting way to get around. And by the way, the price is the same fare as every other ride-on bus at $2 a bus trip. So with all this going on, my concern though is still we're a customer service oriented business. As much as we can have all the great technology in the world, it still depends on our bus operators, and we've got a great team out there. Sometimes we have some that need a little more encouragement on how to be better customer service agents, but we really try to work hard in listening to our customers and see how can we improve service. Phil McLaughlin should be here tonight. He's the chief of my planning section, so if you've got questions on route suggestions and ideas, he'd be glad to take those. So with that, I've got a few questions. I guess I can go through them. Okay, there was a question about lost revenue to malfunctioning fare boxes. Well, my fare boxes they do take a beating. They are relatively old equipment, and we continue to replace the inside of the equipment because we're part of the region-wide fare structure system. So when you take your Smart Trip card out and tap it, it goes through the entire system. And they take a beating. They're out there 24/7, and we have to maintain them. If you get a bus that doesn't have a working fare box, let me know. We have a great 311 program within the county. Give a phone call, say, hey, bus 5809, fare box wasn't working. That helps me to get these things up to speed. We do replace them on a continuous basis, but like any piece of mechanical equipment, it does take maintenance, it does take repairs. Is the county serious about climate change? Oh my goodness. Yes, the answer is a strong positive yes. I know the county executive as well as several council members says, how soon can we go to an all-electric bus fleet? Well, quite frankly, we do have a third of my fleet is compressed natural gas, which is a quite clean burning fuel out of our Gaithersburg depot. We've got these 14 electric buses in transition and planning, and certainly we're going to make sure that we have the opportunities to buy more electric buses as they come online. The challenge for electric buses, quite frankly, is the battery packs. They don't last as long as a regular bus. But the technology keeps getting better and better every single year, and we're definitely invested in electric buses and want to keep them going. The Ride-On app, oh, I'm sorry. That Ride-On app is a challenge, I will be honest with you. We continue to work on getting that app to work better and better. It's gotten better, but it still has several more steps to go before it becomes a much more robust platform, and we continue to work on that, but I'm not going to give excuses. It's just one of those things we've got to continue to improve. We have changed its platform so that it's a much more easier program for us to update because it used to be we paid a consultant to build the app, and then that consultant, we had to work with them, whereas now we're able to kind of work within the system itself, but it still needs some work. The cool thing is, what's helped the app is that all of our buses have Wi-Fi capabilities. So we're able to track the buses a lot better because they're pinging away wherever they're at, which gives the app more opportunity to update to say where your bus is. The other thing that we're doing with that whole technology realm is that we have a dispatch system that's probably about 18 years old. And fortunately, we're going to be able to replace that in the next 24, 28 months. The same system that WMATA uses for their buses, we'll have on our buses. So then I can track my buses a lot closer. We can keep an eye on things better, and plus the buses will talk better to the system, so we'll have better technology working for us. Suggestions on some routes. I'm going to hold off until Phil gets here. He promised me he was coming, but he got caught up in traffic, so I'll go hold off on that. And you're looking for some ridership data at various stops. Phil, we track that continuously. In fact, all of our buses have automatic passenger counters on them. So right now we're in a process of validating the passenger counters with the fare boxes. We used to always collect our data from the fare box where the operator would click away, which is good, but it depends on the operator to count and click away, where the automatic passenger counters would do that automatically. So we're in the process of validating that so that we can then get a better sense of who's running our system. Possible route changes. Certainly, I know, Phil, we are unique in this country is that most major transit operations, they'll look at their routes once a year. We actually do it 3 times a year. We actually make modifications to our schedules 3 times a year. So we actually look at where we have resources that we can reapply. We look at to see where traffic is slowing us down. We look at where, for some reason, and there's Phil, so he's coming. Well done. You'll be next. Okay. So we're doing that on a continuous basis. Quite frankly, we're looking at an entire review of our whole system in the next couple of years. So we're doing a lot of these things that, because quite frankly, we are 45 years old this July. There's a question about subsidizing Kids Ride Free and those sorts. I think I will address that. I know there's more interest in expanding that concept, but right now we're pretty excited about the kids riding, and that is a program that's in place as of last July. Buses not stopping. We do have a really good 311 system. If you have a resident or a friend and a bus and they're out waiting for the bus and the bus wasn't by, all I need is the time and the bus number. And we will find out who that operator is. Every time somebody calls me to complain, I tell them that because it helps me to manage the bus operators. And they know that we're going to be, we can follow up with them and we'll follow up with you if you've got a problem with that. Sometimes we get full buses and they should put the full bus sign out front. If they don't do that, we would like to talk to you. Because we're all part of this process. We want you to ride. The more you ride, the happier we are. Okay, I talked about the ridership trends. Greater than 50% or more with kids riding free, and it continues to go up, which just makes me happy because I think they're recognizing that they can really get around this county in a nice, clean, safe bus, and I'd rather have them inside a bus, and we know what they're doing. The Flex program, as I said, it continues to grow. We certainly are looking at where we can put it elsewhere in the county, which does require more buses, but certainly we want it to grow. We think it's a cool idea. Other communities across the country are looking to us to see how you guys implement it. So it's it's a growing program. And certainly, as I talked about, we really want to grow to an electric fleet, but certainly it makes sense to have a balanced fleet so that you're not so dependent on one technology, because quite frankly, if electric fleets need to be charged up at night, and if you don't have power to charge them up, you don't have that fleet. So we like to balance the propulsion systems within our fleet. And certainly, the last thing, we are working closely with WMATA. We've expressed our concerns about some of their proposed changes. They're going through their public hearing process. We've been very clear that we need them to be supportive of their transit operations here in Montgomery County, and we hope that process will continue. So with that, I'm going to leave Phil. There were a couple questions on these two here. Okay, this question here and here and here. Okay, these 3 right here and yeah, and then we're open for lots of questions. Have at it.
Hi, my name is Phil McLaughlin. I'm with Ride On with the Planning and Implementation section. Our group does the planning and scheduling. I apologize, I'm serving on a jury this week and we ran a little bit over here at the end. We met a few months back, several months back with some Tacoma Park planning staff to talk about the local bus service in these communities and could we look to restructure it. We sort of put that back burner, not that you guys weren't important, but what we were doing at the time, we were spending a lot of planning time working on the Purple Line construction at the Silver Spring Transit Center. There's a lot of moving operational parts that required a lot of hand-holding from our staff. And also, too, we have our brand new flash service that's starting. Dan probably mentioned that. It's being launched this spring or summer. That runs from, it's a limited stop service using brand new 60-foot articulated buses running from along US 29 from Burtonsville and Briggs Cheney down to Silver Spring. There's local route changes, about 9 ride-on routes that are proposed to be restructured as a result of that. So what we've done is we've begun to look at some of the things, as Dan did mention as I was coming in, we are perhaps next fiscal year going to launch a study to restructure Ride On. Okay, Ride-On has been in place for 45 years. Some of the routes down in this community were actually some of the original routes that you can see the numerical listing of those routes. They started down here and then we sort of graduated up county a little bit. We're going to look at that route structure and see what types of changes we can make to improve the system, improve our optimization, and to continue to integrate with our high-capacity services like the Flash, and we have one along 355 as well. Continue to integrate with Metro Bus. I mean, here along Philadelphia Avenue, we have a local bus route, and WMATA has a local bus route. We're going to look in the short term, before we get to this restructuring, to see if we can intertime those buses for that 6 or 7 block segment where they share the same roadway. That may provide higher frequency service for folks who travel in those communities. I am aware of I don't know if I'm sticking to the agenda here, but I am aware of a very particular request that would provide one bus rides, one seat rides between this general area, these activity centers, and activity centers on New Hampshire Avenue. And that doesn't exist today, and I see a lot of head nodding. Some folks do that quite often. So, you know, today that requires at least a two bus trip. So one of the things we looked at is obviously the geographical area of Tacoma Park is relatively small. And as Dan talked about, we introduced a brand new demand response service this past summer. And we've had a lot of success. We've seen steady growth month to month. We're studying that right now. It's a pilot, so we're studying to see the best uses moving forward. And as we were doing some analysis here in the city of Tacoma Park, we were thinking that that type of service would probably serve this community very, very well, especially that quadrant, you know, down on the sort of the southwest side that doesn't have any bus service. Down the streets are pretty narrow, so I think a 30 or 40-foot bus probably would have challenges getting through those communities. But perhaps these smaller buses that we're using for the demand response, called the Flex, would serve that community fairly well. So that's one of the things we're looking at here in the short term. What was the other one?
I guess there was an issue of ridership, and then this one, changing of schedules or routes.
Okay.
I mean, explain what we do for input getting routes and how we go about working on routes.
So when we do a route restructuring of any type, you know, the one we're doing for US 29 regarding the local routes, there's 9 routes involved. So that's sort of a larger project than what we do. When we do a sort of a 1 route or 2 route restructure, which we do a couple of times a year, we hold community meetings. We hold a formal meeting to get formal input, but we also hold community meetings, whether it be at a civic association or whether it be a planned meeting, an open house of some sort, to gather feedback. We present a proposal of what that change would be. We talk about some of the structural things about the route, but we also talk about frequency of service, span of service, to solicit input from those who use the service, so that when we ultimately make the change, we've had the most input possible to make the change that could best benefit those who use the service. That's typically how we do it. In this community, the last significant one we did in this community was probably in 2000, I'm going to say around 12 or 13. We made modifications to the routes 18 and 25. We held some community meetings down here prior to going to implementation with that, to make sure that we had input from those who use the service, and are we making the right type of change. I don't know if I addressed anything, but somebody had asked very specifically for ridership data on the routes in Tacoma Park. I don't know who that was, but I do have some ridership data I can leave here. This is FY19 data. We are updating our FY20 data, so this is the latest we have at this point. It's stop level data, so it'll show you the amount of boardings and alightings at each one of the stops. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Does the city planning staff already have that, or can we just send it to them and then?
I'm not
that's
sure.
why I asked.
I can certainly leave it with the
Leave
city,
it-
so
yeah, leave
they
it
can
with
make
us
copies and get it out,
Great,
distribute it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So we'll open it up a bit. Since I have the mic, I'll take the first question, because I know some people regarding the flex buses or trying to connect this community center with our rec center on New Hampshire Avenue. You had some ideas, but what's the process for moving forward on some of those ideas?
Well, in terms of it depends on what you settle on, right? So if you want to do a flex, that's a specialty type vehicle. We have to purchase buses. So there's some lead time process for that. And of course, everything goes through a budget procedure, just like you guys do here in the city. So we would have to make that an initiative that we want. We'd have a partner, theoretically, how we do that. It could be that, maybe it's not a demand response service that would work best here. And we can learn this through discussions with, through a charrette or some sort, or through, a working group. Maybe it's a circulator service of some sort, that would work better. And that might be a different procedure because typically you could use the same vehicles that we already have. Maybe there's a way to restructure some of the local routes and reallocate resources. So it really depends on what strategy we want to use to make that connection. And we certainly want to do some analysis on, what is the potential ridership, what is the potential performance of this service. We don't want to design a service that's going to be a poor performing service or be at the bottom of our list, but we have to consider for restructuring or elimination every other year or so.
Great. Well, just for your information, actually tonight we're voting on a contract to have a group help us with a community collaboration on the future of the rec center on New Hampshire Avenue. So maybe we can continue talking about that process because maybe they could intersect. Since I know these two ladies over here are very interested in this topic, before we move on, is there anything else?
Hi. So it was mentioned earlier about that you all have been working a lot on the Purple Line as it relates to the Silver Spring Metro Station. The city of Tacoma Park also will have a Purple Line station, which is in relatively close proximity to the recreation center as well. As you all are working to kind of think through ride-on bus routes through the new Purple Line, would you consider kind of working in some of these discussions about that, in terms of like connecting? Because I could imagine, particularly for our station, we're going to see a lot of people probably going to want to transfer from, say, Langley Park and have easy access to something like the Tacoma Metro Red Line, or access through our various business districts in addition to the rec center, which would be along the way. So how has that process worked in Silver Spring? Are you all bringing some of those larger discussions to play as you're talking through, or is it just right now focused on temporary relocation of stations as the construction is happening?
Yeah, more so the latter there. We're focused. I mean, the work that we did for the Purple Line required us to, it was due to the construction, come out of the transit center and operate in temporary locations. And that was a fairly complicated process. The longer term planning that you're talking about is once the Purple Line is in operation, how do the links make to the local service? Because it's generally in a built environment, okay, and there's a lot of local bus service out there, the connectivity generally works today. It might not hit the nodes that you're talking about, whether it be, a direct hit to the metro station or to the rec center. So we can think through those things. A lot of that planning is still to come.
Hi, I'm a member of the Friends of the Tacoma Park Rec Center and the Recreation Committee, and I think you have my two-part question. The first part of which I think you answered about the route that we want to unite the city and the people who live on both sides of it. Have you got that question?
I do.
Okay. But so what I'm trying to understand is how long is this going to take? I mean, we talk about implementing and we're going to do this and we're going to do this, but is this going to take 2 years? Is it going to take 1 year, 6 months? And as I said in my question, when I've called 311 about this, I have not been helped.
And somebody had given you information that may not have been correct, sounds like.
The first person I spoke with, a woman who I think is in your office, it seemed like this was the first time she'd heard about this issue, and she was very thoughtful in her reply. When I called back, 4 months later to say, well, what has happened since? As I wrote here, somebody said, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. This person first told me my issue had been resolved.
Oh.
I think because somebody had phoned me a few months before, that was considered resolved. I don't think that's a good way of keeping track of the issues. And when I pursued it, he said, well, these things take time. I continued the conversation, and he said, okay, he would something, pass it on. But I just want to know, how can we plan for this? What are your parameters?
So I think in this particular case, I'm sorry, you sound like you got a little bit of a runaround there. I apologize for that. But in this particular case, as I said, we came out here in the fall and met with Tacoma Park planning staff, and they introduced that concept to us and several others. And we, as I mentioned, we did backburner that a little bit until just recently, within the last month or so. So we're in that process right now. We're going to schedule something here in the next month or so to come out and have a sort of a brainstorming session, a charrette of some sort, to talk about solutions. Okay, as I said, one solution could be a flex service. Well, I think that's a little bit longer term of a solution because we don't have those vehicles. Perhaps it's a shuttle of some sort, that operates at very particular times of the day. It's a different type of solution. When you talk about midday service, if you're talking about, say, adding a midday bus, we have buses during the middle of the day. When we talk about our peak bus requirement being 312 buses, that's 312 at 7 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We're only about 180 buses during the middle of the day. So we can add vehicles during the middle of the day. Now, there's a cost to that. You have to hire bus operators, and there's maintenance expenses. So you have to go through a process to get that. But that's a little bit shorter of a term process than purchasing a bus, waiting for it to come in, and then implementing that service. So I think it really is going to be dependent upon what type of solution we think would best work here and how we work through the process.
May I follow up? If you could just give me a ballpark, in other words, if we have a gathering in a month's time, that would be super. Let's say we were going to have a shuttle.
Okay.
And we talked with you, and you talked with us, and that's what we're going to do in the off hours. Would that take 6 months, a year? I know there would be routes and drivers, but I just want a ballpark understanding rather than a general, these things take time, which is not, of course, what you said.
Yeah. Well, I still think it would be inadvisable for me to give you a particular day or date, only because it really depends on the solution. As I said, let's say we settle on, a shuttle would really work best here. Okay, and that's going to require 2 buses during the middle of the day, which we have the vehicles, and it's going to require 12 platform hours per day. Okay, well, that could be a new budget request, 12 platform hours times our hourly rate times number of days a year. Or it could be that we restructure local routes in the meantime and we redeploy some of those resources. Those are 2 different potential solutions, and one would take a little bit shorter than another. Going through a budget process takes a little bit longer of a time since we do an annual budget process. So I really, giving you a particular time would be depend. Once we decide on a solution, and we can talk about next steps from there.
Great.
I had a question about the 311 service. I've also had, it's basically been a black box that I never get a response. And I'm wondering, are we doing something wrong? That we don't get a response, or that there's never a resolution, or that the resolution is that we're told in a message on our voicemail that your issue has been resolved when nobody has contacted us?
I'm not really sure without a specific, but I mean, the way the 311 system works, it goes to a central operator who then categorizes all that information and sends it out to the departments that are responsible for that. When it comes to our department, we have an individual who filters that and says, okay, this is a comment about a bus running early. That goes to one particular location. This is a comment about, I'd really like to see new bus service. That comes to me eventually. So there are different, it really depends on what the particular complaint is. I doubt you're doing something wrong. It sounds to me like there might be a little miscommunication going on.
And so what's the best way, if that happens again, whose attention should we bring that to?
I think you should let me know. You
Okay.
can let me know. I'll leave my contact information, and I can make sure that it gets to the right person. We have in my particular section, ours are categorized. They're called planning studies. When they come in, they could be, you need more bus service on the Route 12, or you need to run the Route 12 until 2 o'clock in the morning. Those would all ultimately get to me. And I have one person on my team that takes that information and gets it to the individuals that are responsible for that. And if it's a service request, I need more frequency on the Route 12, we don't just go, okay, well, let me go get more buses and add more frequency to Route 12. We put that into a consideration plan, and as we move through each budget cycle, we go through what requests had come in. Are they supported? Okay? Are they supported by ridership? Are they supported by with the available resources before we go ahead and make a change? So it really depends on the type of response, but I can leave you my contact information, and if you go through that, I'll make sure that the appropriate person has an appropriate response.
Yeah, I was wondering if there is a customer advisory group anymore. I know that when I first moved to Tacoma Park about 20 years ago, there was one, but as far as I can see, there's no longer one.
Yeah, we have one. It's called TAG, Transit Advisory Group. It's a group made up of, I think we have about 16 members of that. We meet again, in fact, the end of this month is another meeting. We meet 4 times a year with that group. I don't know, when are they scheduled to turn over?
It rotates, I think, every 2 years. So there'll be maybe some openings coming up in the upcoming year. So we'd love to have you if there's an opportunity.
I guess I'd looked for information on it and I wasn't able to find anything. So it would be helpful if there was information on your website so that we could contact members and we could actually get involved there.
Thank you. Hi there. I'm a daily bus rider. That is my means of motorized transit, okay? And that's been true for many years. So I have a number of questions and comments. One is that there's so much construction happening between Tacoma Park and Silver Spring. So do you give your drivers more leeway so they're not under such pressure to adhere to their schedule? And I want to give an example. For example, I was riding the number 12 about a week and a half ago. I was going between Tacoma Park and Silver Spring. I'm at the intersection, I'm on the bus at the intersection of Wayne and Dale, and the bus driver says, "Is anyone turning?" That doesn't mean anything to me, but I realize as she goes straight on Wayne Avenue heading towards the Silver Spring stop and doesn't turn on, is it Spring Street that goes behind Whole Foods, and do you know where I mean?
Cedar.
That connects
Cedar
to
Spring.
Colesville?
Yeah, Cedar.
Cedar.
Yeah.
She doesn't turn because she says, nobody said they're turning and I'm late, so I have to go forward. So I'm going forward. So do you modify your schedules when there's construction, or is that an individual driver's choice?
Longer term construction projects, yes. It's not the individual's driver's choice in this particular case. Longer term construction projects, yes, schedules are modified. Short term construction, not often. Not often. Just because you don't know the parameters of when this construction is going to start, oftentimes you don't know the parameters of when it's going to end, oftentimes. But in terms of general schedule maintenance, every route a schedule is adjusted once every 2 years for the weekday, Saturday, and Sunday schedules. And where we get that data from, it comes directly from the bus. So every time that bus goes out there and he travels between Tacoma Station, we have what we call time points. The next time point, he provides us travel time. That's the data we use to make the schedule adjustment. If we are allowing 4 minutes, but it's actually taking 6 minutes, the next schedule adjustment would reflect 6 minutes.
Okay, so just to know, that was an unclear situation for me, and I needed to get to Colesville Road. Then what about, because of the Purple Line construction at the Silver Spring Metro, all the or the bus pickup stops, many of them have been changed. And, you know, I've gone to the WMATA person to ask, because the signs were not real clear to me of where I should stand. and they were as uninformed as I was. So in terms of coordination, because the changes involve both WMATA buses as well as ride-on, in terms of coordination, when you make bus stops changes, it is so important that the signs are can be understood by lay people as well as the people who manage the transit center.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that it be done, that there be in-service training and information for people before the changes are made, because the WMATA people said, I don't know anything more than you. And I said, did you receive any training and or information? And I was told no.
We have a tendency to compartmentalize some of those things, even though we're in a shared location.
And so in terms of, the environment, bus riders really are premier environmentalists. And especially as our city and our county gets more, prioritizes the environment and the need for responding effectively to climate change, free bus service for everyone is really a commitment to addressing climate change. I would like to know what it would take for the city of Tacoma Park to work towards giving free bus ridership to people living in the city, or at the county level. Is there a commitment there? But in terms of the environment, bus riders have been committed to preserving the environment for decades, whether by choice or not by choice.
Yeah, we've had this discussion several times over the past 4 or 5 years, and we've done some analysis on what the costs may be, not isolated to just Tacoma Park, but countywide. The cost is about $35 million a year to have free transportation. It'd be lost revenue for ride-on, about $20 million a year. But the real expenditure is to WMATA. So WMATA carries about 40 to 45% of the riders in Montgomery County. Okay, and the way our route structure works in Montgomery County, it's meant to be complementary and not competitive, so that we can broaden the coverage area. So there are certain areas of Montgomery County that are only served by Metrobus. That's why we have this regional fare policy, this common fares, free transfers between riders. So if we were to offer free rides on ride-on, we'd have to extend that to Metrobus in Montgomery County, and that becomes an expenditure, and it becomes a fairly big financial hit.
And then when you do that, do you compare what the public support of roadways are for cars and how that compares, and are bus riders getting their fair shake?
One of our council members, Councilmember Katz, asked that very same question last year during a T&E session. Would have been just during a general council session. He asked that very same question. What's the benefit of providing this, and can we rationalize it with a cost-benefit analysis? And we have not done that work.
One more question so I can get some others, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, so in terms of development projects, Tacoma Park is doing a lot of development here, and how has the city of Tacoma Park, and at what point do they approach you and communicate with you about your needs as a transit system and safe bus riding, for bus driving? For example, we have the junction development here that's happening by the firehouse, and Carol and Ethan Allen. And so, has there been a discussion about what is safe for bus riders? I mean, I've seen buses really be challenged because of the density of the traffic there, and many bus routes converge right at that point.
Yeah, I don't know specifically about that particular project, but obviously we'd want to be involved early in the planning process so that if there's infrastructure changes that are necessary, we can get those incorporated into the project. I mean, some of the things we're doing in US 29 as an example, and we've done it on 355, is we've implemented TSP, Transit Signal Priority. So intersections are equipped with technology that senses when a bus is approaching. The bus signals that it's approaching the intersection. And if it's at the appropriate time of this light cycle time, additional green time can be extended to the bus. Even in some cases, it can be preempted so that the bus would have green time ahead of, the traffic in that direction would have green time ahead of the other direction. There's not bus lanes per se, but it's so everybody gets that benefit. So we're doing some creative things like that, and we've realized a real benefit on 355, and we expect to see that same type of benefit on US 29. Thank you.
I wanted to back up to follow up with what a couple of folks have said. So two things. One is as a council member, I think the question for me is not when do we get a particular circulator or what would you call it, flex,
Yeah.
but when can we start the process? And I think that the mayor pointed out that we're about to start a community engagement process with that neighborhood. Perfect time to double up with you folks and
Good.
do the kind of joint work that we need to do.
Okay.
The other thing, following up on the notion of free riders in the ride-on sense. Right now, do you only? I assume you only do it through the fare card, and is there a way to do it some other way, or does it have to be through the individual fare card, so that if a third party was involved in the financing, how would, if it's every time I show up with my fare card, how would you do that if there was a third partner involved in discounting the rides for particular sets of residents?
I'm not sure exactly. I mean, we have a model. We have a relationship with Montgomery College, and Montgomery College students pay a transportation fee. The college collects that fee, and then they reimburse ride-on to provide that. So we have a model in place to do that. It's not the best model because those kids aren't using a Smart Trip card at this moment. They're using a Flash Pass. So we're trying to limit the number of Flash Passes that we have out there because that requires a bus operator to validate, and it can create some conflicts. So we'd love to get everybody on the Smart Trip card. We don't own that system. Metro controls that system. So we need to work with Metro to make sure that we can get it done. But I don't think it's a hurdle that we couldn't get over. I mean, that's a reasonable request.
And the ridership data that you were going to give to the city, do you also have projections?
I don't have projections.
Okay,
we
so
have
you have the
macro
current ridership
level
data, which is
projections.
great.
Yeah, we have macro level projections on where we'll be next year, but not route level projections or stop
okay.
level.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. I'm certainly supportive. I'm on the council here. I'm certainly supportive of us looking into, transit for the new recreation center on New Hampshire Avenue when that's put in, and also the existing one, and bus transportation for people coming to the city hall here. But I represent a very low-income neighborhood that has, in the last census, the lowest number or percentage of cars for the residents, and so they're very dependent on bus transit. Recently, as you probably know, the Washington Adventist Hospital moved out of Tacoma Park, and many of my constituents are interested in getting to their medical appointments at either a new hospital or at the doctor's offices, which are relocating away from Tacoma Park near the local hospitals. And so as we look at what the transit needs are for a recreation center, I think it's important that we have a process that also includes other transportation needs. And I know that one of the big needs that the community has is getting to stores, particularly grocery stores, in an easy way. Right now they depend a lot on either Metro Access or taxi cabs to do that. And it's something that current bus ridership gives you some details, but it doesn't tell you about the trips that you're not making.
That's right.
That we need to evaluate and see where there might be more ridership for you.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how we include that in the process.
I think we incorporate that into our charrette planning process that we just talked about. That will, hopefully within the next month or so, we have something scheduled. You guys have a workshop scheduled. I think we can participate in that. I think we include it there. I mean, that's something I had staff take a look at what we believe from our perspective to be underserved areas in Tacoma Park. We didn't necessarily look at the demographics or the financial makeup of those communities at this point in the analysis.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for being here. I think this is a great opportunity to have a chance to talk with you and brainstorm a little bit. And as you can tell, I think we're really excited to work with you and to explore new routes, literally and figuratively. So I wanted to expand a little bit on the idea of the Ride on Flex program. And I think this is a really exciting thing that you're piloting. I would love for us to have an opportunity to pilot something similar to that, as a number of people have said. I think Tacoma Park is sort of a unique and might be a more unique and different pilot site than some of the other places you've done already, just because of the narrowness of our streets and the hills and the interconnectedness we have, I think, to some of the transit nodes where we both need connection but also have some of that built in because we aren't that far from the red line and soon to the purple line. I also would be curious to explore whether we could possibly look into autonomous vehicles and some sort of alternative, pilot related to that with regards to a shuttle, as well as possibly a smaller vehicle. The flex buses I've seen a few times are smaller than a normal bus, but they're still pretty large. And maybe if there isn't a lot of ridership and you're going to some of these smaller streets, there might be an opportunity to explore a smaller scale vehicle. So I think there are some great opportunities there. And I also wanted to flag that, as you probably know, just last week, the council passed a climate emergency resolution outlining some very bold steps that we plan to take, including some related to transportation. And part of that will involve some additional outreach to the community to specifically discuss our future look at transportation and what community members want in terms of this and what we can do both from the perspective of electrifying and reducing our emissions and also increasing our transit ridership. So I hope that we can have you involved in those conversations and we can collaborate in that regard. I also wanted to ask with regard to that, and the questions about the free and reduced fees, which I think is something we also would really like to explore, what your plans are with regard to the bus transformation project and collaborating more regionally with other entities such as WMATA, and if you foresee there being some sort of outcome to improve bus service through those efforts.
Let's talk about the bus transformation. So there are no imminent plans to make adjustments consistent with the bus transformation. However, we are working collaboratively with WMATA right now on building an additional bus garage in Montgomery County that would provide additional capacity for ride-on. So as we're prepared to grow, whether it be through reallocation of Metro bus routes to ride-on routes, which was one of the recommendations from the bus transformation, or in addition, I should say, to support our BRT growth in the future. So we're getting ready to launch US 29. We've got Veers Mill under study, 355 under study, New Hampshire under study. So we're going to need capacity for those buses, and working closely with WMATA to share garage space, share land perhaps and garage space, They have a gigantic facility up in White Flint that's 225 to 250 buses. That's an ideal location for us. That's pretty close to our service area. So that's one of the considerations that as we work with them is how can we take somewhat more control of that facility, and then perhaps we offer something down county that you guys could utilize for your services, which may be focused in Prince George's or in the district. So we're working closely with them. On the buses, on the flex buses, one of the things about the size of the vehicle is we wanted to ensure, and we will moving forward as well, that we are able to provide that demand response service to all our customers. So those in a wheelchair. So we have a wheelchair vehicle. That lengthens the vehicle when you put that on there. We also have a fare box on there because we do feel like it's important to, when we introduce this to new riders, that they can integrate easily into the transit system. And having a fare box with a smart trip card reader, we feel is an important piece. So those two things sort of helped control the size of the vehicle we got. We wouldn't necessarily go into that process and say, we want a 23-foot bus with 11 seats. That's sort of what came out of it when you put these other controls in play, other needs in place.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
With regard to WMATA buses and Metro buses that are running in Montgomery County, does the youth program, the Youth Ride Free program, apply to those as well?
Yes.
It does. It's good to know. Personally, I had my son paying for his rides on them. That's right.
Yeah, that he will need to get a youth cruiser
Yeah,
card.
he does.
Okay,
Exactly.
good.
Thank you. And then my final question, and then if it's all right, maybe I can ask a couple from one of our colleagues who had sent some in, is regards to timing changes for some of the routes that appears to have happened back in January. Was there a switchover in January to some timing changes? Because I've heard from a number of people that starting in January, some of the buses, particularly the 12 and the 13, changed when they were coming. And for a lot of people in terms of their commuting route, it ended up just not being a convenient fit with them coming a little earlier and a little later than what they really needed. And I'm wondering, in terms of community outreach for making those sorts of changes, what do you do? How can people provide input before those things happen? And are there opportunities to change that in the future?
In this particular case, again, those were directly related to the construction that was happening at the Silver Spring Transit Center. And the 12 and 13 were changed significantly to support the construction. So those two essentially became loop routes. Today, both those routes originate at Tacoma Metro, run their route over to Silver Spring, the bus and the bus operator have a layover over there, then it would start back up and come back to here to Tacoma Station. We had to take the layover out of the Silver Spring portion, so we essentially made it a gigantic loop route. It starts out at Tacoma, runs over to Silver Spring, makes a bus stop there, not a terminal location, and comes back. In making those adjustments, it changed the schedules pretty significantly. And we heard those same comments that you heard as well. Unfortunately, in this particular case, there really wasn't much opportunity. We had this thing prepared. First off, we thought it was just going to be a month and a half construction. It's turned out to be 4 months, at least 4 months. And so there wasn't much chance. We had it prepared to start last May is when they thought it would start. It didn't start until January. So, there wouldn't have been much opportunity to provide feedback for that type of detour schedule.
So will that go back to being on a more regular system when that's complete?
It'll go back to the former schedule.
Okay. Great. And then one of our council members wasn't able to be here today and sent in a few questions. I was just going to ask a few of them. He had some very specific ones related to the number 18 bus and some issues on that. Maybe we can forward those to you to respond. He also wondered about if there's a bus that goes by or doesn't show up and someone's sort of stranded, is there a phone number that people can call for immediate service or an immediate sense of when the next bus is coming if they're not seeing that on the app so that they can get that information quickly?
311 does have access to the same systems that our central dispatch has, so they can provide that information. Sometimes buses get delayed due to accidents, other incidences, so they don't show up. And they can call 311 and say, hey, where's my bus? They can pull up the same screen and they can see where the next bus would be.
Okay. Thank you. One of the other things he noted was also an interest in autonomous vehicles, and he was wondering if A, if you have grant funding available, or B, if Tacoma Park were able to partner with someone through a grant to pilot an autonomous vehicle shuttle, whether there would be an opportunity to partner together with Ride On something like that.
I think the short answer is yes. We had a we had a presentation back in January from I cannot remember the name of the firm. They're based in Clarksburg. They've built at the at an old at the old ComSat site. They built a track up there, and they're designing autonomous vehicles and testing them up there. So those at least that one manufacturer is here in our backyard. It was really an intriguing demonstration. We didn't see it happen, but they showed us in PowerPoint. So I think there's going to be good things happening there, and I think there's opportunities to partnership.
We have a few more minutes. Ms. Maria, if you want to ask some more of your questions.
Sure. As you look at redesigning routes in Tacoma Park, yes, it is very important to look at the demographic information, and also to look at resources in Tacoma Park. Like tonight, the rec center has been mentioned, or the library, or other resources, and see how people from different parts of Tacoma Park, how readily they can travel to a resource outside their ward without transferring a bus. And for example, in Ward 5, where a lot of the residents live along Flower Avenue, those residents are not easily able to access resources in Tacoma Park. Rather, they can more easily access via bus resources in Silver Spring, because there aren't frequent bus routes, or to get to the new rec center, if you live on Florida Avenue in Tacoma Park, you would have to transfer. So it's that cross-pollination, because we in Tacoma Park pay extra tax money to make our community extra good, and it's how can we make sure all residents have equitable access to all of our resources.
I think that's that's something we can take a look at when we sit down and put a map out and put all the routes on there. That's something we could consider as we're going through that process.
Great. And just one other little advocacy is, I unfortunately have had to frequent the Lost and Found Center of the bus center off of 410. I can't remember where it's tucked away. Is it the Route 1 that goes?
Route 2.
Route 2. So I can get from the Silver Spring Metro to that center very easily. However, I have stood in the cold for over an hour trying to get back. And why? Because the location of the bus stop at that facility is in a parking lot on like a light pole that is not visible very readily. And so if the route is starting in the afternoon, the driver may pull out without circling around or looks, and if you were to stand by the bus stop, you're between vehicles, so no one's going to see you, okay? So think about how to make that bus route more visible to drivers.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, seeing it. We want to just thank you so much for coming out this evening, and
Thank
we
you.
look forward to following up on a number of things. Thank you.
Thanks.